Hey everybody! So today I'm going to show you how to use the mat cutter in order to cut nice little borders for fancy done pictures. Things that you're going to need. You're going to need a piece of mat board. Our mat board is usually black. You can get mat board in all sorts of colors. Usually the other side is going to be white. Standards are black and white. We usually use black here. So you need a piece of mat board bigger than the eventual size that you're going to need so you can cut it down. You will need the actual mat cutter, which is this tool right here. It's very fancy dancy and big and heavy. You will need some scrap piece of paper to do some calculations on, a pencil, and the artwork that you plan on getting the mat made for. Just to note, you will need to know how big this is. If you don't know how big this is, you will also need a ruler. All right, so the first thing that you need to measure out is how big your mat needs to be total. So for this, you're going to need to know your size of your artwork and roughly how big you want your mat to be. I also have a calculator right here because I don't trust my brain to math. So first thing I need to know is how big my image is. I like to do this in inches. My image is 9 by 12 in this particular case. And the next thing I need to figure out is about how much space I want to overlap on the sides right here. That little gap of overlap means that I have just a little bit of wiggle room to make sure that this is secured nicely to the mat. So in my particular case, I like to have about 1/4 inch on each side, which means double that for each side. I need to subtract from here about 1/2 inch. So I'm going to subtract about 1/2 inch from both sides. That means that I have 8.5 by 11.5. All right, from here, that'll just tell me about how big that inner opening is at the moment. But I don't need the inner opening for the total mat size. I need the outer edge. So I need to think about how wide I want my mat to be. When I'm thinking about how wide, I mean how wide it is the border. Remember to double it because you have a border on both sides as well as top and bottom. In this case, 2 inches is generally a good average mat size. Make sure that if you are doing a piece for a contest, that you are not doing too big of a mat or too small of a mat. Sometimes contests will give you a maximum or a minimum mat size. Most of the time you will not see mats bigger than about 3 inches, then it just tends to look excessive. So in this case, we're gonna do 2 inches. 2-inch border means 4 inches on both sides. So we're gonna add that 4 inches to our total. So 4 inches on both. So 8 plus 4, 8, 9, 10, I think that's 12.5, and then 15.5. I'm shocked I managed to do that in my head. I will double check myself before making any cuts. But currently 12.5 by 15.5 is the size that I need to cut out of this guy. I will use a big guillotine cutter to cut this. I'm not going to try and cut this with a pair of scissors because I want this to be nice and straight. So I will draw that out and show you the cutting process after I've measured in just a moment. All right. So as it turns out, my width right here was pretty much exactly 15.5, so we're gonna call that good. So I only needed to make one mark here at the 12.5, so that this is 12.5 by 15.5. And this is our big guillotine cutter. If you've never used one before, make sure that any safety things are taken off. Lift this up. This is not actually a sharp blade. It will not cut you unless you're being extremely uncareful. It is the shearing motion between this piece of metal and this piece of metal that causes a cut. But it is good for very long lines that are very, very straight. Since I have my pencil line going all the way across, I just need to line it up with the edge of my piece of metal. I want to hold down on this side with a nice flat hand. I'm going to use this to go cut, chop. And this is the piece of mat board that we are now working with, cut to size. All right, so I'm going to talk about the mat cutter briefly. I don't need to do any real calculations for the inside hole of my mat board. That will just kind of come through with how we measure on here. I just want to point out some parts. Okay, so this right here is a lifting handle. It opens up like this, and our little mat board is going to go under here. This little edge right here is where the cutter is. This is the cutter itself. It scoots down like this, and you can see how it comes down and cuts right there. It's a little bit small, but you can see it's just one simple razor blade. If I want to take that razor blade out and replace it, I can do that with this handle right here. So make sure you're not messing with that too much. These are our guides for starting and stopping, a green dot for starting and a red dot for stopping. You'll also notice that this blade, because of the way that it sits, only cuts in one direction, which is this way. That way cuts going this direction, you just end up not on the blade side, and it's a big old ripping mess. Over here, I'm gonna lift it up, get it out of the way. This is our measuring scale for how wide we are, or how far away we are from our cutting edge. So in this particular case, we want this to measure at 2 inches because that's what we said we wanted our matte border to be. And you're gonna wanna scoot out for this one. This particular thing is a little bit finicky whenever you wanna move it. So you're gonna start by twisting these to the left so that they're loose, and then you're gonna push down on these knobs until they click. And at that point, they should freely move, like so. I'm gonna line up this side right here with my 2-inch mark right about here. Let's see, I'm gonna be right there. And then I'm gonna tighten these down by twisting them to the right. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. All right, so now this should be set up to be ready for cutting my 2-inch mat. So I'm gonna take this guy, I'm gonna flip him over to the back. I'm gonna butt him up right against this, and I'm gonna lower my little handle. I'm gonna get this guy out of the way. We do not want him yet. We need to do a test first. So I'm gonna use my pencil. I'm gonna draw right where my cutting line would be. And I'm gonna do this for all 4 of my sides because all 4 of my sides match. If for whatever reason you are cutting an uneven mat where 2 sides or 1 side is larger than the rest, which does happen, sometimes that is the look that you want, then you would not do this on all 4 sides. You just do it for the appropriate sizes. And now I have this. This little outline is exactly how big my cutout is gonna be, which means I can now take my paper and I can kind of put it right on top. And yeah, all 4 of my corners are covered, meaning that it's big enough or my paper is big enough to cover my entire hole. I won't have any gaps, and that's what you want to see. If you saw for whatever reason there was like your line way over this way and really far in, then you might need to adjust a little bit, but right now this looks like it's just about 1/4 inch on each side, which is exactly what I was looking for, which means that this can be cut just as is. Everything should test fit just fine. So what I'm gonna do is I'm stick it under, butt it up, just like I was whenever I was doing my pencil mark, and now I'm going to pull in the cutter. Again, the cutter only works when coming from the left towards the right. I want to line up my green dot so that it's just outside of my little line, that test line that I have. And then I'm going to push down with my blade. It's going to start coming in a lot further, but don't worry, it's cutting at an angle and it doesn't actually break through all the way until you reach about here, which is where your green dot is. I'm going to pull this across until my red dot is just past my line. That means I should have cut all the way across, and I can lift this up. If I take this out, I should be able to get that opening to pop up on me. At this point, it's a matter of just doing the same thing for all of my other sides. So green dot just to one side, push down, pull across, pull up, twisty twist. Green dot on the outside, push down, pull across till red dot's on the outside, pull it up, twist, pull back, down, across. And this time when I lift it up, if I've done it correctly, it'll just pop right off. Sometimes you will get stuck in your corners. If you do, you can use an X-Acto knife to just come in and slice right into that corner. If you cut a little bit too far, it's generally not noticeable, so that's not a problem. If you have ripped it because you're going the wrong direction, then you might need to scrap the whole thing and try again. But from here, I now have a mat cut just perfect.